Decolonization must be understood in the context of the root word, colonization. What was colonization? Colonization was a deliberate act on the part of foreign powers to take charge of the total lives of the people that they invaded and to change them either as to become slaves or to become instruments that they would use for their benefit. The struggle for decolonization was informed by the realization of the colonized people that they had been dehumanized and humiliated, and therefore they needed to regain their human dignity. The first phase of that effort was political. And political to mean that the people who were decolonizing or regaining their independence were seeking to take charge of their affairs in terms of administration and deciding what is in their best interest in all facets of life. Some call that kind of decolonization or independence flag independence, because we then acquired new flags, we acquired new national anthems, we acquired new mottos, we acquired governance systems which were then populated by people of our own ethnicity or our own race or our own nation. But yet we discovered that no sooner had we regained independence in that mode, which was political, than the neo-colonizer had, through very clever subterranean ways, infiltrated our ranks, even amongst our brothers. And the net effect is that the impact of colonization affected all our lives. It affected our spiritual lives. It affected our mentality. It affected our education system. It affected our agriculture. It affected our languages. It affected our economies. It was total. It was a total change of who we truly are. And the truth, therefore, is that as we speak now, our effort at decolonization is work in progress. Sometimes we move 2 steps forward and we take 4 backwards in real terms. Our politics, where we thought we had freedom, is controlled and manipulated. Our monetary systems are manipulated through institutions that are foreign. Our agriculture is controlled by multinationals through institutions which we do not control. Our technology is controlled from outside. Our language is foreign. We don't use our languages. I would have loved to be interviewed in Swahili, but in order to reach a bigger segment of the continent of Africa, I have to speak in English or French reality. So if you look at the totality of all that, even our literature, our medical sector, need I say more? The colonization was so impactful. Our food, our everything, the way we do things mentally. So decolonization must be mental. Kenya's Ngugi wa Thiong'o, in a book that is famous, talks about decolonization, and he was talking about decolonizing our literature, and he himself started writing in his mother tongue, Gikuyu, and he was persuading others to do the same. But I can't agree more that decolonization is work in progress, and it's going to take time because it was mental. Kwame Nkrumah said, in 1962, we have regained political independence. Even that, if we are not careful, we will lose. What we must now do is to go on overdrive, to regain economic independence. But he said that of all the things that we are fighting against, the most difficult and that one that is going to take time is the impact on our minds. Kwame said it was so grave that it has almost become part of our DNA, and it will take time. Recognizing that truism as it is, it then reminds you of how difficult it is. And it's not only us who are seeing it now. When Carter G. Woodson was writing in 1933, Miseducation of the Negro, he had recognized it amongst the African Americans in the United States of America. When W.E.B. Du Bois was questioning the ways of Booker Taliaferro Washington in his college in Tuskegee, he had recognized that. When Malcolm X was speaking against these numbing and lulling ways of making us believe that we have achieved while we are not, he had recognized it. When Bantu Stephen Biko was writing, I write what I think, he was thinking about this. When Leopold Sedar Senghor was speaking about the African Festival of Arts in 1966 in Dakar, Senegal, he had recognized this. When Cheikh Anta Diop was speaking about Africans rediscovering themselves, he had recognized this. When Kimba Vita in the Congo was creating her own religion and saying that Christ came from Congo, and when Simon Kimbangu was doing the same in the Congo, he had recognized this. Decolonization is a process, not for the faint-hearted. Sometimes it is very easy, particularly when you generalize, to assume that every Caucasian is anti-African. That is not true. I've met people who are of Caucasian origin, who are of Asian origin, who are more Pan-Africanist than people who bear the black skin. But when we speak generally, we are saying, when we talk about Europe and America, we are talking about the systems in the United States of America, the systems in Europe, in other words, institutions that are controlled by selfish politicians are created in a manner that they are designed to keep the black man at the lowest rung of the table. But I know individuals who have fought and are continuing to fight genuinely against discrimination, against humiliation of the black people. And those are the ones I describe as friends of goodwill. And those friends of goodwill must be encouraged and must be recruited to fight from us, because it is only when they see that this particular question affects even people who are of the white race, that the racist whites and racist Asians and racist Arabs, we don't say this as often as we should, will then recognize, and I repeat ad nauseum, that we are of one race. So black lives matter, but all lives also matter. This is what we must never forget. Because when we overemphasize black lives matter, it is as if other lives don't matter. They all matter. All lives matter. The only reason why we are saying black lives matter, because we have seen what happened to George Floyd. We have seen what happens to black people. And we have seen the systemic way in which all these are articulated and executed. Even when one begins to talk about discontent, it must be given a historical context. Discontent is brewed when there is discrimination and injustice. And you can see it even when you trace the history of Europe and even outside of Europe. If you look at the Young Turks Revolution in Turkey in 1908, the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, the French Revolution itself in the early days, the revolutions in France and the riots in France in 1958, the riots in 1968, the Tiananmen Square in 1980, the South Korean riots, the Sharpeville Massacre in 1966, the Soweto massacres in 1976, and one one can go on. And then you can see what is now happening in France. The riots which have been ignited by that senseless killing by a police officer of a young 17-year-old who was not resisting, footages now demonstrate. It tells you that there was a volcano. And in the case of France, that volcano has been there for a long time. There have been migrants to France. If you go to cities such as Marseille, you will be surprised that the population of Moroccans, Aboriginal Moroccans and Algerians who are there. If you are in Paris and Nantes and Lyon, you'll be surprised at the number of Africans who have migrated to France and who are now French citizens. Yet the French system is a system that is still controlled by a few racist Caucasians who run the political machine and who have created a policing system that is inclined towards dealing with non-indigents to mean Caucasians on the basis that they are guilty until they prove themselves innocent. As long as that is the culture that dominates in France, then the riots are just about the logical outcome of it. For 5 days on, the country cannot operate. Of course, it pains one when individuals' properties are destroyed through looting and all. But it is the language, rioting is the language of the unheard. If you have been speaking loudly for a long time, then violence becomes the language of the unheard. And it is a lesson to France. In fact, this is unfair to say, but I'll say it. For France, the chicken are coming home to roost. They are now being reminded of what they did to Guinea in 1958. They are being reminded of what they did to Algeria. They are being reminded of what they did in Indonesia and other parts of the world. I hope that this very painful lesson is going to send a clear message to the French administration that the time is now to accept and acknowledge that the injustices that are inbuilt in the French system will be dealt with and dealt with satisfactorily with people participation. And it's also a warning to other countries in Europe. Spain had better look. Portugal had better be on the lookout. Italy had better be on the lookout. Greece had better be on the lookout. It is a message that is being sent to Europe. If you don't style up and you don't treat other human beings like human beings and you call them animals, then with due respect to animals, they'll behave like animals. As I've said before, I'm normally very reluctant to use the word leaders when I'm making reference to many African politicians, even when I'm talking to individuals who occupy positions of leadership in Kenya. So I'll use the word, what should the people who occupy positions of political office in Kenya, political leadership in Kenya do? First of all, it is important that they take the pulse of the nation. And taking the pulse of the nation recognizes that we must be in charge of our institutions. We must have an education system that creates an army of young men and women who are capable of being innovators and inventors. It is only when you innovate and invent that you can begin to decolonize. China has done it. South Korea has done it. Vietnam is now doing it. Malaysia did it. Because when you do so, you decolonize sectors of your economy. When you want to decolonize the agricultural sector, your universities must be universities which are teaching research and development so that your seeds don't come from Monsanto and Syngenta. When you decolonize your education system, you've got to create an education system where your STEM, science, technology, and maths are not funded by JICA from Japan. When you decolonize your technology companies must not be dependent on the backbone of technology that is operated from Germany. When you want to decolonize your politics, you must have a political system that is based on ideology, not ethnic mobilization. When you want to decolonize your economy, you cannot run an economy where your national budget is approved by IMF and World Bank. When you want to decolonize, you cannot run a currency which is controlled and which is dollar founded and which can be manipulated at any one time. When you want to decolonize, you must recognize that you can't have a military which is trained by your potential enemies. When you want to decolonize, you must have a culture which is founded on your value system. When you want to decolonize, your curriculum must be decolonized. And when you recognize that you are too small, then you must operate regionally. That is one of the things that we must do, so that in Kenya, one of the things that we should be giving a pride of place is East African community, which will create a confederation within East African community with a single currency, with a single market, with a customs union. And this will ultimately be blown up into an African system, which will have an Africa continental free trade area with all tariff and non-tariff barriers removed, and an Africa Agenda 2063. We must remove visas. We must become a good country in order to be good East Africans, in order to be good Africans, because that is the only way in which we are going to be decolonized. If we do it as alone, history has demonstrated not once, not twice, but times without number, that it is still the rule, and the rule in the world, it is survival of the fittest and the dying of the least suitable. As individual countries, we are very weak. And we can only be strong if we unite. And our unity must be unity of purpose. I've said it before, and I say it now. And Nkrumah said it before me. Until the day that Africa acquires nuclear weapons, you will never be respected. History has demonstrated that you must deter others by telling them that you are capable of doing your worst. North Korea is feared by the world because it is assumed they have a nuclear weapon. Whether they have it or not is another debate. Pakistan, China, Russia. This is the reality of the world. We will not use it until you use it, but we have it. Decolonization. African country has achieved total decolonization. Those that have attempted to do so have been beaten to smithereens. Libya under Muammar al-Gaddafi tried. What did they do to him? They killed him. Burkina Faso under Thomas Isidore Sankara tried it. What did they do to him? They killed him. Ghana under the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah tried it. What did they do to him? Removed him from power. Tanzania under Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere tried it. What did they do to him? They undermined his economy. Mozambique under Samora Moises Machel tried it. What did they do to him? They killed him. So whenever you try to decolonize in all spheres, the former colonizer turned policeman of the world or policemen of the world will take you out. And if they don't take you out, they recruit some from within your number. Chinua Achebe said in his book, Things Fall Apart, the white man was very clever. He came and cut the links and the things that kept us together, and he broke them, and things have fallen apart. And what they have now done, we have expelled them. But what I fear, our brothers whom they now work with, whom they have recruited, and who have our skin, speak our language, and are related to us, but they are working for them. The fifth columnists within our ranks, those are the most dangerous. No African country has decolonized. But working in unison and in unity, this is a battle that we must fight and win. And something is happening in the world today that is beginning to energize me. European countries started with France, apologizing for slavery, apologizing for colonization. Then came the Belgian Prime Minister, and recently the Belgian King in Suriname apologized. I'm waiting for the British, one of the worst colonizers, to apologize. I'm waiting for the Italians. I'm waiting for the Dutch. The Dutch did. I'm waiting for the Germans. I'm waiting for them to apologize, because when they apologize, then they will begin to stop their diabolical and subterranean machinations of controlling us, even when we don't want to be controlled. It's work in progress. It is intergenerational work, but it's work that must be done from generation to generation. All languages must be celebrated. There are over 3,000 languages and dialects in the continent of Africa. There are languages across the whole world. But there is also wisdom in recognizing that not all languages can be deployed as languages of commerce and political discourse. Africa has recognized that, and progressively the African Union is recognizing that and has acknowledged that Kiswahili, which is an African language, has distinguished itself as a language capable of being a lingua franca. On the 5th day of July, every year we celebrate the Day of Kiswahili. So let us speak our languages, let us enjoy them, but let us begin to embrace Kiswahili as that language. Can we have any other language? Yes. There are those who have argued that Hausa can also be spoken in that regard. There are those who have argued that Yoruba can be spoken in that regard. Some even say Amharic and Oromo. But Kiswahili, in my view, is the language. It is the language that we must deploy, because Kiswahili now has demonstrated that it is capable of acquiring languages in the arts, in the sciences. And if we deploy it, it will become the lingua franca of Africa. Does that mean that other languages will die? No, they will not. They'll still be used in local communities. Does it mean that we'll abandon the use of English? No, we'll use it. In fact, we had better know English. We had better know French. We had better know Russian. We had better know Mandarin. We had better know Portuguese. The more we know, the merrier. But one lingua franca, so that when I go to the floor of the United Nations, I'm addressing them in Kiswahili and they have an interpreter there. It will give me a source of pride. I was disappointed recently when the East African Legislative Assembly denied a representative of Congo from addressing the assembly in Kiswahili. But there will be those battles, but we will win them. Kiswahili will triumph. Some of us are wittingly and unwittingly correct. You know, by the manner in which you are trained and educated makes you behave and think in a particular way. Even I would say that perhaps sometimes in my unguarded moments, I do things that may be beneficial to the enemy. But it is the consciousness that is important, that increasingly I and others are becoming conscious of everything we do. So we have sinned and fallen short of the glory of the expectations of our people. We may say and must say our mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. We have sinned, let us be forgiven and let us forgive ourselves. But when our sins have been forgiven us, we must change and begin to do the right thing. Not necessarily. There is no shortage of warmongers in the world, but we must at all times always remind people that peace that is based on mutual respect is critical. And that therefore, peace must not be based on domination, Pax Americana, Pax Britannia, Pax Russiana, Pax Chinese, Pax Africana. No. Peace must be based on mutual respect. And if we indeed are to recognize that every people have the right to decide what they do, and also to be conscious of the fact that they live in a society and there is a give and take, then there would be no war. There would be tension, but the tension would be mediated. War only comes about when others try to impose their ideology, when they try to impose their things upon others. That is the genesis of war. When you come from the standpoint of superiority and you want to impose your superiority and culture and dominance over the others, then the others will resist because they want to protect their very being. But having learned from history, there should be no war. But the other lesson that we learn from history is that human beings don't learn from history. This is tragic. So the reality is we must, in the nature of things, seek peaceful resolution and mediation of all things, but always aware that there are those warmongers who belong to the war industry for whom war and conflict is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and they want war at all costs. They want war periodically so that they can rebuild. These are the same people who, after war, are engaged in rebuilding. They have made God, money their God, and they have made material things their God. Those are there. And they are the ones sometimes who force people into war. But it's not inevitable. War is not inevitable. War is not desirable, because history has taught us that even after war, you must negotiate. So why must we not negotiate that there may be no war? It belongs to this generation and generations yet to be born. The current generation are merely custodians of what is Africa and what is African. And those to whom it belongs must recognize that it belongs to them. Sometimes I fear that the younger African generation do not recognize that this is their patrimony and that they have a duty to protect and preserve her. They must be made to realize. The day they realize that, they'll not be crossing the Mediterranean to die. They will not be humiliated at the embassies of the United States of America and European countries. They'll not be seeking to be enslaved in the Arab world. They'll not be running to other parts of the world. They'll stay in the continent of Africa, and by the sweat of their eyebrow, they shall give meaning to the divine instruction, "Go ye and subdue the world." There is need for self-realization and self-consciousness, and that consciousness remains very vital in our recognizing that we of this generation are merely custodians of Africa for others yet to be born. And if that is our realization, then the simple answer to your question, Africa belongs to our sons and daughters alive today and those yet to be born.